The 2026 World Cup brought over 1 million European tourists to America, and what some of them found here broke the internet. Picture this. You're traveling to another country for the very first time in your life. You're following your national team through the World Cup. You've never set foot in America before, and somehow, within 2 weeks, you end up getting invited to the White House. Not because of anything that happened on the field, but because of what you ate at a diner at 1 in the morning. That's not a movie plot. That actually happened during the 2026 World Cup, and it's honestly one of the wildest stories to come out of this entire tournament. Over 1 million international visitors came to the United States for this World Cup, and what a lot of them found here had basically nothing to do with what they were expecting. From ranch dressing to Waffle House to Buc-ee's beaver nuggets, European fans landed thinking they already knew what American food would be like, and within days they were posting some of the most genuinely enthusiastic food reactions the internet has seen in years. What started as food tourism turned into a full-blown viral social media phenomenon. So today we're walking through exactly what happened, who these people are, and honestly, why this whole food thing tells us something pretty fascinating about how differently Europeans and Americans experience the world. Alright, before we get into it, I want to hear from you because this channel only works if you're actually part of the conversation. Out of every American food that sent European fans into a complete frenzy this World Cup, which one do you think hit them the hardest? Drop your answer below right now. Is it A, ranch dressing, B, Waffle House, C, Buc-ee's beaver nuggets, or D, Texas barbecue brisket? Go ahead and comment your guess, because at the end of this video I'm going to tell you the actual answer, and I'll be honest, it's probably not the one you're thinking of right now. So let's set the stage here, because the scale of this World Cup is honestly hard to wrap your head around. This is the first time ever that 48 teams are competing instead of the usual 32, which means more matches, more cities, and way more fans than any World Cup in history. According to Oxford Economics, over 1.24 million international visitors came to the United States just for this tournament, spread out across 11 host cities from Seattle all the way to Miami and up to Boston. Those are international tourism statistics that shattered every previous records FIFA had on the books. Now, here's the part that actually matters for this story. Europeans take their food seriously, like really seriously. This isn't a stereotype, it's just how it works over there. French cuisine is literally protected by UNESCO. Italians will argue with you for 20 minutes about how a dish is supposed to be made. Germans have centuries of tradition wrapped up in their bread alone. The British have their Sunday roast, their fish and chips, their entire pub culture built around food and community. For most Europeans, food isn't just something you eat, it's part of who you are. So when over 1 million of them got on planes to come to America, the food expectations were pretty low. They figured they'd eat some burgers, drink some questionably large sodas, and focus on the football. What actually happened was nothing like that. The culture shock started almost the moment they landed. Okay, so if there is one person who basically became the face of this entire story, it is a guy who goes by Freddy. He posts as Freddy LA7 on X. And here is the thing, nobody actually knows what he looks like because he keeps his face hidden in every single photo and video he posts. What we do know is that he is a German soccer fan who landed in New York on June 5th for his first ever trip to the United States, caught a connecting flight to Atlanta, and just started documenting everything in real time. His very first food experience in America was Taco Bell, and he described it with 2 words that ended up getting shared everywhere. He called it the Holy Land. From there, he made his way through Georgia, hitting Stone Mountain, the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historical Park, even tracking down filming locations from Stranger Things. And then came the moment that changed everything for him. At 1 in the morning, somewhere in Georgia, Freddie walked into a Waffle House for the very first time in his life, and he posted about it right after. Great food, great prices, friendly staff, 10 out of 10, we will be coming back. That's it. That's the whole post. And it exploded overnight. By the next morning, hundreds of thousands of Americans were sharing it, because honestly, there is something kind of beautiful about watching someone fall in love with a place you have completely taken for granted your whole life. That post went viral on X almost instantly, and it kicked off one of the most talked about social media virality moments of the entire tournament. From there, it just kept snowballing. He stopped at a Walmart and was genuinely stunned by how massive it was. He pulled into a Buc-ee's in Alabama, which, if you don't know, is this Texas-born gas station chain where the flagship locations are bigger than some European supermarkets, and he could not believe it existed. He tried Raising Cane's and summed it up in 3 words: lives were changed. He drove through Louisiana and said the vibes were insane, and that it was crazy how diverse the country was. His journey through the American South, from Georgia down through Alabama and Louisiana and into Texas, basically became a real-time tour of southern United States food culture. His following went from basically nothing to nearly 700,000 in under 2 weeks. And the reason is simple. He was seeing America the way Americans themselves had stopped noticing, and the whole country was watching him do it. Now, Freddie wasn't the only one having this experience, not even close. Fans from all over were posting reactions, and honestly, the pattern was almost identical every single time. Scottish fan Sean Cumming made his way to a Buc-ee's and ran into the now infamous Beaver Nugget, which is basically a caramel-coated corn puff that people get weirdly obsessed with. His reaction became one of the most quoted lines of the entire tournament. He said, and I'm paraphrasing slightly here, that the European mind simply cannot comprehend how good these things are, and then admitted he was the European mind in question. He also tried Carolina-style barbecue ribs for the first time, and his exact takeaway was that all other meat had basically been ruined for him forever. Then there's Scottish tourist Erin O'Connell, who posted her first ever Raising Cane's experience on TikTok, and that video racked up over 400,000 views. Her review? 10 out of 10. And she said the sauce was, in her words, delish. And it kept going. A Swedish fan discovered ranch dressing and basically declared that Europe needed to get on this immediately, and spent the rest of her trip hunting down the best ranch she could find. A fan from Leeds wandered into a 5-story Starbucks in Chicago and could not process the idea of a coffee shop taking up an entire building, especially when most Starbucks back home are roughly the size of a closet. An England fan tried In-N-Out Burger and posted in full caps that it was the best food of their entire life. And then, this is probably my favorite one, European visitors discovered America's free refill culture. In America, soft drink refills are free. Just free. Unlimited. You can walk up and fill your cup as many times as you want. That unlimited refill policy is so standard here that most Americans have never once thought twice about it. In most of Europe, one drink at a restaurant costs several euros with 0 refills included. So yeah, free refill culture landed on European social media like an actual miracle. The portion size difference was another one that kept coming up, because American servings, even the standard ones, were hitting European visitors in a way nobody had prepared them for. Here's what's actually interesting about all of this, and it's not just that Europeans liked American food, it's specifically what they liked. Nobody went viral over a fancy restaurant in New York or some high-end steakhouse in Texas. The stuff that blew up online was gas station snacks, late-night diners, fast food, and free refills. And that gap between what they expected and what actually got them excited tells you something real about how these two cultures think about food completely differently. Food writers covering the tournament described it as a genuine culture shock moment playing out in real time across social media. In Europe, food is about the ritual. Meals take time. Portions are intentional. There's a whole relationship with the food itself built around tradition and quality. Fast food exists, sure, but it's a convenience, not something you'd ever celebrate or seek out. In America, it's about abundance and access, any time of day or night. A gas station in the American South selling fresh brisket, caramel corn snacks, and a 32-ounce soda with free refills, all under one roof, isn't weird here. It's just Tuesday. A diner that's open 24 hours a day, every single day of the year, serving hot food to anyone who walks in at 1 in the morning, no questions asked. That just doesn't exist in the same way anywhere in Europe. And that southern hospitality, the warmth of the staff, the openness of the whole experience, kept showing up in these posts again and again as something European visitors genuinely didn't see coming. And honestly, food writers covering this described the whole thing as reaching a kind of critical mass. One person discovers ranch dressing, posts about it, and suddenly every other European fan in the country is adding it to their list before they've even tried it. This World Cup basically became, completely by accident, the biggest simultaneous food tourism moment between European food expectations and American food reality that's ever happened. Some people covering it used the phrase soft power, and honestly, it fits. The most effective cultural diplomacy of this entire tournament wasn't happening in boardrooms or press conferences. It was happening at Waffle House at 1 in the morning, and it all played out live on social media for the entire world to watch. Okay, so now let's get back to Freddie, because his story does not stop at the Waffle House, and honestly, the next part is where things get a little complicated. Once his following exploded towards 700,000, former NFL star J.J. Watt personally paid for a hotel suite for Freddie and his friends in Houston, and the room ended up stocked with merchandise, jerseys, and cupcakes from strangers who had been following along. NASA invited him for a private facility tour, and an actual astronaut on the International Space Station sent him a message welcoming him to America. Country singer Ella Langley, who Freddie had called the soundtrack of his entire trip after hearing her on every Southern radio station, eventually connected with him and brought him backstage at a show in Oklahoma City. And then came the White House. Nick Adams, who is the special presidential envoy for American tourism in the Trump administration, reached out to Freddie directly after seeing his posts. Adams told Front Office Sports that he personally messaged Freddie, introduced himself, told him he loved what he was doing, and invited him for a tour of the State Department and the White House. Adams publicly called the whole thing a fabulous moment for the country and framed it as exactly the kind of soft power and cultural diplomacy that American tourism could generate on a global stage. And that's when a lot of people online started raising their eyebrows. People pointed out that Freddie basically appeared out of nowhere, grew to hundreds of thousands of followers really fast, never once showed his face, and somehow ended up on the radar of celebrities, brands, government agencies, and the White House, all in the span of about 2 weeks. One writer at The New Yorker even described it as looking like an online personality who got traction and then got amplified into something resembling propaganda. Other people online just straight up called it the most obvious psyop they'd seen in years. Freddie's response to all of it was pretty simple. He said they were just normal World Cup tourists. Whether you buy that or not is honestly up to you, but here's the thing that isn't in question. The food reactions from European fans this World Cup were real. As ABC News, Fox News, Newsweek, and BuzzFeed all reported, these moments were verified across dozens of outlets, and they actually capture something true about how differently these two cultures live day to day. All right, let's go back to the question from earlier. Which American food shocked Europeans the most during this World Cup? Was it A, ranch dressing, B, Waffle House, C, Buc-ee's beaver nuggets, or D, Texas BBQ brisket? Based on everything we found, pulling from ABC News, Fox News, Newsweek, BuzzFeed, and a bunch of other verified sources, the answer is A, ranch dressing. Food writers covering the tournament said the ranch reaction was so consistent across so many different nationalities that it basically became its own cultural phenomenon. That Swedish fan we mentioned earlier, she spent the rest of her trip traveling around specifically trying to find the best ranch in the country. And honestly, that's kind of the whole point of this video. Ranch is so common here that most Americans don't even notice it exists anymore. And sometimes the things we take most for granted are exactly the things that say the most about who we are. So here's my question for you. If you're European, what American food do you think would hit you the hardest if you tried it right now? And if you're American, what do you think Europeans just can't wrap their heads around when it comes to how you eat or how you live? Drop it in the comments, because that's genuinely my favorite part of making these videos, seeing what you all have to say. If you liked this one, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because there's a lot more of this coming as the World Cup keeps going. And remember, whether you call it football or football, the game always brings us together. I'll see you on the next one.